Okay, so that's a bit of a sort of cheesy sort of punt, you know, it happened, and that goes to the PR side of thing, you know, we're talking about Sweet Mandarin, how it's really important to get the PR, and that's something we really mastered with this, because the next day, we sold some Top Gear, all the shops we'd sold them in, suddenly they had a huge run on these cars, and that's fantastic for us. So yeah, our PR is really fantastic, really good to utilise PR as much as you can. So because we're talking about China, I'm not going to go too much into the retail side of things. I'm talking about China now. So when I went to China, I needed to be able to get a factory which would be able to produce these cars, produce the products, and be able to forge relationships. And maybe my first year doing this business, I was a bit naive into the fact, you know, I'd never been to China, couldn't speak a word of the language, and I had to learn so much in such a short space of time. So after a couple of years, I was able to gain experience, and I managed to find a factory. I mean, during I'll talk about the advantages and disadvantages of making in China, because there's great opportunities, but there's also great challenges to overcome. So some of the advantages in China is actually, the legislation in China is very good to support businesses. There's less barriers to entry, which means if you've got an idea, you want to take it out to China, you can actually create the designs in England, and you can actually take it to China and make it, and it'll cost very, very little, if anything at all, to do it. So, for example, this January I was out in China for the world's biggest toy fair in Hong Kong. So I spent a couple of days at the Hong Kong Toy Fair, and then took my ideas to the factory, and we spent 3 weeks making ideas. Out of those 5 ideas for 2009 models, I made 5 prototypes, and 2 of them were great. And now the retailers for 2009 want to buy these products. But if I'd made those 5 products in England, then that would have cost me a fortune. I wouldn't be here, I'd be bankrupt. I wouldn't be able to afford to do that. So the fact that I can actually make these products in China and explore new ideas is great. So that's a great first advantage. The second advantage is actually everything's much more cheaper to do and do it in China. For example, the labour costs are a lot less, and that's a bit of it's a bit of a sort of touchy subject really. People think it's a very touchy subject to talking about labour costs. Well, actually, it depends on how you look at it, because if you work with a factory which is very good, and you obviously get the most out of the staff in terms of they enjoy the quality and a good factory, then that's the best factory to work with. And in terms of the wages, the difference is if Mrs. Jones in England goes to a factory and works £6 an hour in England, and then Mrs. Jones goes and works for £1 an hour in China, she'll be getting exactly the same salary in relative terms, because the difference is of the currency, and that's the great advantage of doing business in China. So another advantage of doing business in China is I've got a whole lot of reasons here. There's a huge number of factories to choose from. Some of the challenges now, because this is a big thing, ensuring its quality. So quality is a big problem, because if you're in England, then it's very difficult to be there. The way I overcame this problem was actually going to the factory and actually testing every single one myself. I'm very lucky to have a colleague in China, so she can actually, I trained her and to be able to go to the factories and work with me. For the first time, we were there in the factory, testing every single product, doing it, and making sure it's all good. I was actually sitting down on the production line with our employees, and getting to know them, getting to know their names, and just making friends with them, because obviously people making the products on the production line, they don't know where it's going, they don't know who they're making it for. So for them it's quite cool, because they know that, oh, I'm making this for Vernon now, and Vernon's in China, Vernon's in England, and this is going to be made for his customers. So when they're making it, it makes them feel good about it, and obviously makes them more motivated. And I can actually, with my input of, I can sit down with them and say, hey, how about we solve it like this, and that'll make it better quality. So that's good. And the quality is very important. Some other challenges, obviously, Mandarin. Chinese, Mandarin and English, you know, two different languages, barrier. So what I did to overcome that, I took a crash course in Chinese, and that helped really to get communication, because if you can't speak Chinese, you can't do business in China. And you can get that from translators, but the problem is if you've got a translator, then sometimes it's difficult to communicate through them. And also, if they don't know you and they know the factory, then obviously they're going to be more biased towards the factory. So it's really important to have your independence when you go into the factory. So you need to be an independent person. Another problem is, you know, you're a constant battle with the currency fluctuations. You're totally at the mercy of the currency. What we found is that over the last year, the US dollar was at $2 to £1, but over the last year it's gone down to 140 to £1. So that's made the cost of importing 25% more expensive. So either you've got to make the end product 25% more expensive, or you just you can actually bring the costs and absorb them into your business. Obviously another challenge is my age. I was 20 years old when I started doing business. Well, I was 19 years old when I started doing business. I'm 20 years old now. So when I was there, it was very difficult to people thought, well, you're 20 years old. What are you doing? You're in China and you're 20 years old. You're running your own business. That's incredible. Yeah, it's incredible. Or you're just plain stupid. And that the way you've got to be able to make people know that you're being serious is obviously you can tell them what you've done, the other factories you've been to working with, but the moment you show them the money, then they know you're being serious. So that's important. Cash is king in this sort of business. Also, another challenge is lacks intellectual property. When we design a product in England, the moment your product gets taken out to China into the factory, your idea can be immediately ripped off, and that's something to be very, very aware of. When we get the product to market, we've got to be first to market, we've got to be there, we've got to do it right now, and we've got to get it straight out to market. So we've got to be first to market because other people will start copying you. Okay, I think that's everything I wanted to share with you today. You know, all I want to say is that when starting your business, you know, you're special, you're unique, and if you want to start your own business, just go out and do it. You can do it. Try it. You know, when I was 2 years ago starting my own business, I had no idea where we'd take us to. But now we're selling in Europe, we're selling in the UK, we're starting to sell in America, and now last year we sold 5,000 units. This year we're going to sell 50,000 units. So it's great opportunities. You've got to take risks. You've got to be very passionate about what you want to do. But overall, you can do it. So be confident in yourself, and then that'll take you to where you want to be. So I think that's everything I wanted to share with you. So thank you for your time, and good luck.